Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming up to my presentation. I have a quick question for y'all. How many times when you go to your vehicle and it just refuses to start the battery issues? I'm pretty sure many of us had to deal with that problem sometimes. I know I had to deal with that a couple of times myself. Just a few weeks ago, as you know, my van, the battery was completely dead. It wouldn't start, and it did nothing. I even tried to jump start it, and it still would not crank or nothing. And then there was a time with my Scion, which was about 3 o'clock in the morning where I was trying to go to work. It would just die on me completely. It's unexpected. And as well, it wouldn't sweat out for nothing. So as you know, the main problem that we all usually suffer with cars is that the battery just dies on us leaving stranded. Well, as you know, that can be very frustrating, especially when you're in a hurry. Fortunately, there is a solution to help to prevent these problems from happening. To prevent future complications from vehicle batteries, we just got to follow these 3 simple steps. 1, to check the battery periodically. 2, inspect the battery and equipment. And 3, continue maintaining the battery. First, we need to check the battery periodically. I know everyone is busy and they don't have time to check their battery monthly, but I recommend at least check your battery like every 6 months. And also, make sure you know the age and how old is your battery, because you know if your battery is about 3 years or older, you know eventually it's going to end up having poor performance and you're basically going to end up leaving stranded. So I recommend you become very familiar with your battery brand. You know, some are better than others, like Duralast or Ultima, which is very good, very expensive. So some manufacturers claim that their batteries can last 3 to 4 years or some longer. Also, it's very handy to have a multimeter. You're going to need that in order to check your battery. Yes, I'm glad you asked that, good sir. Here I have a battery. And right here, I'm about to show you my multimeter. It's nothing fancy. You can get these at Walmart. This one's about $25. Very handy here. Usually the battery, for it to actually work right and to start your car, needs to give at least about 12.6 volts. If your battery is giving out less than 12 volts, usually it needs to be recharged. Unless it has a dead cell, then you've got a faulty battery. As you know, to check the battery, you just set it here. This one's a little bit different than most. This one actually has the volts. Mine, I just set this to 12 volts. And as you know, just check the negative and positive, and it should give you a reading. This is a brand new battery, so I already tested out. It is about 12.6, so it's good. And if you don't happen to own a multimeter, or for some people who are not good at mechanics, if you don't have one or you can't check it or know how to do it, you can go to any of your local AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, any of them, and they'll be glad to check your battery for free.
For free?
Yes, for free. Then, very importantly, you can check the cold cramping amps. Even though the battery may be fully charged or it's giving out the volts, if your cold cramping amps is very low, like let's say this battery here gives about 655. If it comes out like 100, it's not going to function right. That's what happened to my amp. It was giving out full power, but the cold cramping amps were basically non-existent anymore. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have the equipment or you're not sure how to check for the cold cramping amp, like I said, you can go to any of your local AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts, and they can check it for you for your charge. Once again, it's amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Now, once the voltage and the cold cramping amps have been checked, we're going to move on to the next step, which is we need to inspect the battery and also our equipment. We need to make sure that the battery is not leaking any battery acid, which you know that can be very hazardous, which can also affect the performance of the battery. Also, you need to make sure that you check the terminals, which I have one here, for example. make sure your terminals don't have any corrosion. As you know, corrosion, it can be either the white, looks like white little ashy deposits, or sometimes a little bit bluish and colored, but mostly white. As you here, I have an example of this one, an old one. Y'all probably see it's a good, has some corrosion on it. And usually environments with constant, like it rains a lot, or it gets really hot, or it goes back and forth, like as you know in Georgia, the weather is very ridiculous. It goes from hot, cold, constantly and stuff, which will most likely increase the chances of your battery terminals becoming corroded. If you do have corrosion on your terminals, it's very simple to take care of and clean. All you're going to require is like a brush, baking soda, water, and a towel and a cloth to wipe it off. Now, when you do this, I recommend for safety-wise, make sure you have like gloves, because you know how if you get acid or anything in your hands, you get itchy and burns. I was actually informed that that's not actually a good idea to use that. It's an old myth that advised do not use it. That's why I recommend you have baking soda, brush, and water. Clean it off, and also make sure you have some eye protection to cover your eyes, because if you get any of that stuff in your eyes, it would hurt really bad, and you might have to seek medical assistance.
That'd be bad.
Yes, it'd be very bad. To avoid this problem, so make sure you wear the proper protection. Now, once the voltage and the cold cramping amps have been checked, we're going to move on to the next step. We're also going to have to check the alternator. As you know, the alternator works hand in hand with the battery. You can have a good battery, but if your alternator is gone bad, it's not giving out the proper voltage, it's just unacceptable. Usually, an alternator gives about 13 to 14 voltage to recharge the battery. If it's giving out less, you need to replace immediately. And once again, all your local AutoZone stuff, if you don't know how to check or have the equipment, they'll actually inspect it for you for free.
For free?
For free. Once the battery and equipment has been inspected and everything's good, we're going to continue maintaining the battery. This is a long process where, like I said before, you got to make sure you want to keep the battery and the terminals clean all the time, so check that regularly. Also, you want to make sure that your battery is fully tightened into your car. You don't want that to be shaking around where it can cause damage to your vehicle and to the battery itself, which you want to prevent. Also, you want to make sure that you have the terminals fully tight onto your battery, so that way they don't just slip off, which, as you know, with a disconnect, you lose power, and that's definitely not good. You don't want to be in that situation, especially if you're driving and your car just shuts.
That's bad.
Also, what helps to prevent corrosion usually around the terminals, usually like you can buy like grease or petroleum jelly, which you put around the terminals, or in case this battery right here, they recommend that you put it right here where the terminals connect, so it helps avoid big corrosion. And once you have finished all these procedures, your checks, everything's all good to go, at least you can leave here knowing that you gained the knowledge you need to help prevent any more of those false starts or a bad battery. You can prevent it. That way you don't have to deal with the headaches.
For free.
Yes, for free. So thank you for coming. This concludes my presentation.